It started with that unmistakable feeling, stepping into a space so grand, yet feeling entirely invisible. It wasn't the kind of invisibility that belonged to the realm of philosophy or cosmic insignificance. No, this was a personal erasure. I was in my own empire, a flagship property of Starlight Hotels, one of the jewels in my crown. But tonight I wasn't greeted as the visionary CEO I am. Instead, I was treated like an afterthought, a stray uninvited from the curated elegance of luxury. I'm Serena Davis, a CEO who built an empire from nothing, a proud African-American woman who defied expectations to create something extraordinary. Yet here I was checking into one of my very own hotels, incognito, to experience the pulse of our customer service firsthand. I had no entourage, no designer suit meant to announce my presence, just a determined woman with a mission to uncover the truth behind the pristine facade. The lobby was a masterpiece of modern design. A mix of sleek marble, ambient lighting, and whispers of opulence that would normally make anyone feel like royalty. But tonight, as I strolled toward the reception, I felt a disconnect, a gaping void where genuine hospitality should reside. The front desk, manned by a young woman with the aura of indifference, barely glanced up from her phone. Her name tag read Emily, and from the way she carried herself, it was clear she was more interested in her digital world than the real one unfolding in front of her. I approached the desk with a reserved smile, my presence almost dissolving into the background of this carefully curated environment. "Good evening," I said softly, hoping to be acknowledged with even a hint of the warmth Starlight Hotels was known for. Instead, all I received was a half-hearted squint, as if my arrival was an inconvenience. Emily's eyes flicked up briefly, then returned to her screen with a sort of detached boredom that made my skin crawl. "Reservation?" she droned, barely masking her disinterest. I nodded, producing the confirmation email on my phone, a digital ticket proving my rightful place among these hallowed halls. Emily's eyes barely shifted as she mechanically typed into her computer, her fingers dancing lazily over the keys. There was no smile, no welcoming tone, just a series of curt keystrokes. "I'm not seeing any reservation under that name," she said, her voice laced with condescension. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't a system error. It was as if I had become invisible, unwanted, even in my own creation. I maintained my composure, my mind racing through every possible explanation until the answer emerged, a truth I had been dreading. With practiced calm, I retrieved a second device, the one with full access to our internal system, and discreetly checked the booking record. There it was, my reservation, confirmed and undeniable. And yet, it was absent from the front desk system. A digital phantom had been conjured by none other than Emily. "Miss, could you double-check that for me?" I asked, holding the phone in plain sight so she'd see the discrepancy. Her eyes finally flickered to the screen, and for a brief, unsettling moment, I saw something akin to panic flickering in her gaze. But it was quickly masked by a forced nonchalance. "Maybe you booked the wrong location," she ventured, her tone dripping with an insinuation that I, of all people, could be mistaken. I arched an eyebrow. There was no error on my part. The system was infallible, and it had confirmed my reservation long ago. My instinct screamed that this was no mere mistake. This was deliberate. "Then explain this," I said calmly, tilting my phone so that she could see the internal log, the one that recorded every change and deletion made by the staff. The log wasn't ambiguous. It showed that my reservation had been manually deleted, and it wasn't an error, but an action logged under the name Emily. For a split second, the mask of indifference cracked. Her fingers froze mid-tap on the keyboard, and the ambient hum of the lobby seemed to pause as if holding its breath. I could almost hear the collective gasp of every unspoken customer complaint that had been silenced by this act of corporate negligence. "Explain yourself, Emily," I said, my voice now firm yet measured, as I leaned forward over the counter. Her eyes darted nervously, and the confident veneer she had maintained began to crumble. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the promise of reckoning. Before she could utter a word, the door to the manager's office swung open. In walked David Miller, the hotel manager, another American name that, until now, had represented reliability and order. His face went pale as he took in the scene before him. Me, a powerful CEO, standing before his desk, and Emily, the once indifferent front desk clerk, now visibly shaken. "Ms. Davis," David stammered, his voice betraying a mix of fear and deference. "What seems to be the problem?" I didn't waste time on pleasantries. "David, I've been hearing whispers of service failures here at this location for some time now. Complaints about poor treatment, system errors that conveniently favor certain individuals, and now this." I gestured to Emily, whose trembling hands clutched at the keyboard like a lifeline. David's eyes shifted between the two of us, and I could see the weight of responsibility and perhaps guilt settling on his shoulders. I I thought it was just a glitch," he mumbled, trying to justify the unexplainable. "A glitch?" I echoed, my tone icy. "It wasn't a glitch, David. It was a deliberate act of negligence, a display of arrogance that tells me that you've let mediocrity and personal bias seep into the very core of our service." My words were not just for him. They were a message to everyone in that grand lobby. David's face reddened as he realized the gravity of the situation. "Miss Davis, I assure you, I was—" "Silence," I interrupted, raising a hand. "You were in charge, and you allowed this to happen. Complaints have piled up over the past months. Guests treated like invisible by the very people who are meant to welcome them. And all the while, you let it slide. Today, I'm not here for apologies. I'm here for accountability." Emily's eyes welled up with unshed tears as David fumbled with his words, trying to salvage some semblance of control. "I'm sorry, Ms. Davis. I didn't think—" "Save your apologies," I snapped, turning back to Emily. "Your carelessness has not only hurt our guests, it has tarnished the name of Starlight Hotels. And tonight, justice is not just a word, it's an action." I pulled out my phone once more, revealing the internal records, the countless complaints that had been logged against her. Every instance of rudeness, every act of neglect was right there in black and white. The evidence was damning. A murmur spread through the lobby as staff and guests alike watched the unfolding drama. It was as if the entire establishment had been holding its breath, waiting for a spark to ignite change. And I was that spark. "Emily," I said, my voice carrying both disappointment and resolve, "you're fired, not just from this branch, but from any future position within our network. Your actions have shown a complete disregard for the values we uphold here." The words cut through the tension like a knife. Emily's face fell, and she stuttered something incoherent before scurrying away, her career in ruins. I then turned my gaze back to David, whose eyes were now filled with a mixture of regret and resignation. "And you, David Miller," I said, my tone softening just enough to let him know that this wasn't about vengeance alone. It was about reform. "I entrusted you with the responsibility of maintaining excellence in our hotels. Yet you allowed personal biases and complacency to dictate your actions. Today, you've not only failed me, but every guest who sought a haven in our establishment. I'm afraid I can't let you continue in this role." David's mouth opened and closed as if searching for words that wouldn't come. The silence stretched, a palpable reminder of the stakes at hand. "Ms. Davis, please," he began, but I held up a hand. "No more second chances," I said firmly. "You had ample opportunity to correct the course, but now it's time for a new beginning." With that, I left the manager's office, my heels clicking purposefully on the polished floor. Every step I took was a statement, a declaration that I would not tolerate mediocrity or injustice in my empire. As I made my way to the elevator, the lobby was a mixture of stunned silence and murmurs of relief. The guests, many of whom had endured subpar service, exchanged glances of disbelief. Some even began to whisper among themselves, as if confirming a long-held suspicion that the once glorious standard of Starlight Hotels had been compromised. And now change was in the air. I reached my suite, a luxurious haven with a view that stretched over the city's twinkling skyline, and sank into the plush comfort of my armchair. There was still work to be done. Logging into our internal system, I began a thorough audit of every complaint, every report of mistreatment. The numbers were staggering. I found patterns, unjust dismissals, subtle discrimination, in a culture of indifference that had been allowed to fester under the guise of corporate policy. Every entry was a stark reminder that excellence wasn't just about grand designs or opulent decor. It was about the people. And when those people faltered, when they allowed arrogance and complacency to erode the very essence of hospitality, the system was bound to crumble. With a calm determination, I initiated a series of directives. I called for a complete audit of every branch in our network, a full-scale review of customer service protocols, and immediate compensation for every guest who had suffered from these systemic failures. I wasn't just punishing individuals. I was launching a revolution, a new era where respect, dignity, and accountability would be non-negotiable. Within minutes, my phone began to buzz relentlessly. The corporate board was in a state of panic, inundated with calls and messages. Their voices, laced with fear and desperation, tried to explain how things had gotten out of hand. I listened calmly, my mind already mapping out the restructuring plan that would save not only the reputation of Starlight Hotels, but also the trust of every customer who believed in our promise of excellence. The next day, an all-hands meeting was called at the flagship hotel. In a vast, modern conference room filled with anxious managers, weary staff, and a few brave souls who dared to hope for change, I appeared, no longer incognito, but as the formidable CEO who would steer this ship back on course. I began with a simple statement. We have lost sight of who we are. We have forgotten that every guest is not just a customer, but a vital part of our family. Today we begin anew. My words resonated through the room, a clarion call that ignited a spark of resolve in every listener. I introduced a new code of conduct, revamped training programs, and a system of accountability that would ensure no one, from the front desk to the highest echelons of management, would ever make a guest feel invisible again. As I spoke, I couldn't help but recall the disheartening moment at the reception desk, how a single act of negligence had exposed a deeper malaise within our organization. That moment, painful as it was, had become the catalyst for a profound transformation. It was a reminder that leadership wasn't just about grand visions and boardroom decisions. It was about being present, about holding oneself accountable, and about ensuring that every interaction, every smile, every gesture was imbued with genuine care. Over the following weeks, I oversaw the transformation with a meticulous eye. I personally interviewed every employee, listened to every guest complaint, and even joined the frontline staff during peak hours. I wanted to understand the culture from the ground up, to see the moments of failure as well as the sparks of genuine hospitality. In doing so, I discovered that many of the issues were not the fault of a few bad apples, but of a system that had long prioritized profit over people. One afternoon, while reviewing the new training modules, I received an unexpected visitor, a young woman named Megan, a recent hire who had been working diligently but quietly in the background. With a nervous smile, she approached me in the newly revamped lobby. "Ms. Davis," she said softly, "I just wanted to say thank you. I've never felt so valued in any workplace before. It's like you've given us all a second chance." Her words struck a chord deep within me. It was precisely this feeling I wanted to cultivate, a culture where every employee knew their worth and every guest felt like they were the only one in the room. "Thank you, Megan," I replied warmly. "Remember, excellence starts with us. We must always strive to see each other even when it's hard." That moment was symbolic. It wasn't about a single act of retribution or a dramatic dismissal. It was about rebuilding trust, fostering empathy, and reclaiming the integrity of our brand. I knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, But the conviction that change was not only necessary but possible filled me with an unyielding determination. Then came the twist, the moment when everything we thought we knew about the internal sabotage was turned on its head. While the initial focus had been on Emily's misconduct, a deeper investigation revealed that the issues were systemic. A series of unauthorized deletions and dismissals had been traced back not to an isolated incident, but to a covert faction within the management team. This faction, operating under the guise of efficiency, had been targeting high-profile reservations to favor certain guests, leveraging their positions for personal gain. At the center of this conspiracy was not just Emily, but a shadowy figure in upper management, Cynthia Brooks. Cynthia was known for her charm and meticulous professionalism, a respected name in corporate circles. But beneath that polished exterior, she had been orchestrating a campaign of favoritism and discrimination. The evidence was irrefutable. Internal logs, whistleblower testimonies, and a trail of compromised records all pointed to her deliberate manipulation of our systems. In one particularly damning incident, a guest reservation, one that belonged to a major investor, was given undue priority, while another loyal customer's booking was erased without a trace. The revelation sent shockwaves through the company. I convened an emergency meeting with the board, presenting the evidence in stark detail. The room filled with high-powered executives and advisors fell into a heavy silence as the gravity of the situation set in. Here was a betrayal not just of company policy, but of every core value that Starlight Hotel stood for. In that meeting, I declared, this is not just about one employee or one manager. This is about an entire culture of complacency and corruption that has allowed prejudice and greed to undermine our mission. Cynthia Brooks and those who have abetted her actions will be held accountable. The decision was met with mixed reactions, some in shock, others in reluctant acceptance. But one thing was clear. The era of silent complicity was over. The fallout was swift and decisive. Cynthia was removed from her position, and a sweeping internal audit was launched to root out every vestige of the toxic practices that had taken hold. I personally oversaw the transition, ensuring that every affected guest received a heartfelt apology, full refunds, and complimentary stays to restore their faith in our brand. Every member of our staff was retrained under a new set of standards that prioritize empathy, respect, and transparency. News of the upheaval spread like wildfire, not just within the industry, but among the loyal customers who had once felt betrayed by the system. Social media lit up with stories of how Starlight Hotels was undergoing a revolution. Every post, every share, and every comment was a reminder that true leadership meant owning up to mistakes and transforming adversity into opportunity. I received countless messages from people who had once been disillusioned by their own experiences with poor service, now inspired by the dramatic shift unfolding before their eyes. In one particularly moving exchange, a longtime guest wrote, I've been a loyal patron for years, but never have I seen a company take responsibility so boldly. Tonight, I witnessed justice in action, and I know that my future visits will be defined by genuine care and commitment. It was messages like these that fueled my resolve. I wasn't just fixing a broken system, I was reshaping an entire industry's approach to hospitality. The transformation at Starlight Hotels became a case study in leadership and corporate responsibility. Industry experts lauded the measures taken, and even competitors found themselves reevaluating their own practices. I was invited to speak at conferences, sharing the story of how one act of apparent negligence had unraveled a web of corruption and paved the way for a new, more humane era in customer service. Each time I spoke, I emphasized that change begins at the individual level, when one person chooses to stand up for what is right, even if it means facing powerful interests. But as the accolades and praise poured in, I never forgot the lessons learned in that moment at the front desk. The memory of that dismissive gaze, the cold efficiency of a system manipulated by human hands, remained a potent reminder that vigilance and empathy must be the cornerstones of any service industry. It was a call to always see the person behind the transaction, to recognize that every guest and every employee deserve respect and understanding. In the weeks that followed, I took deliberate steps to ensure that our hotels became places where every individual, regardless of status, background, or circumstance, felt seen and valued. I established a dedicated task force to monitor service quality, one that included voices from all levels of the organization. I held town hall meetings with staff across the board, listening to their concerns and ideas for improvement. And I implemented a robust feedback system, one that not only collected complaints, but also celebrated moments of genuine care and excellence. One day, as I was reviewing the latest reports, I received a call from a young woman named Jessica. Jessica had been one of the unsung heroes of the front desk, a team member who had tried in her own quiet way to counteract the negative culture that had taken root. "Ms. Davis," she said, her voice trembling slightly with both nervousness and hope, "I just wanted to thank you. I've been working here for less than a year, and before today, I felt like I was just another geek in the machine. But now I feel like I'm part of something real, something that cares." Her words brought tears to my eyes. They were a reminder that change wasn't just about policies or profit margins. It was about transforming lives, one interaction at a time. "Thank you, Jessica," I replied, my voice gentle yet resolute. "Always remember, every act of kindness, every moment of genuine connection is a step toward building a better future for all of us." As the transformation continued, I began to see the tangible results of our efforts. The lobby, once a stage for indifference and neglect, blossomed into a vibrant hub of activity and warmth. Guests were greeted with sincere smiles and personalized service, while staff moved with a newfound sense of pride and purpose. The energy of the place had shifted dramatically, a testament to what could be achieved when accountability and empathy were prioritized above all else. Yet, even as the success of these changes became evident, I couldn't shake the memory of that fateful night, the moment when I realized that invisibility was not just about being ignored, but about the systematic erasure of dignity. It was a lesson that would forever guide my leadership, a reminder that true power lies not in wealth or status, but in the unwavering commitment to see every person, every individual for who they truly are. In time, the story of that night became a legend, a parable of accountability and transformation that resonated far beyond the walls of Starlight hotels. It was a story that made people say, "I've seen this before, and yet I can't help but be captivated all over again." And that, perhaps, is the true magic of a narrative well told. Even when the core remains familiar, the passion, the twists, and the relentless pursuit of justice can make all the difference. I stand by today as a testament to that truth. I am Serena Davis, a woman who refused to let invisibility define not only her, but every person who walks through the doors of her hotels. And as long as there are moments when someone feels unseen, my mission will continue to shine a light on the darkness, to demand excellence, and to remind the world that every individual matters. In this empire of ours, no one is just a speck of dust. Everyone is seen, everyone is valued, and together we create a legacy that is both powerful and profoundly human. This is more than just a story of a night gone wrong. It's a revolution, a call to action for every business that has ever allowed indifference to take root. It's about reclaiming the promise of hospitality, where service is not just a transaction, but a heartfelt connection. And as I reflect on that transformative journey, I know one thing for certain. Sometimes the very act of being ignored can ignite the flames of change, and that change can be nothing short of revolutionary. So the next time you walk into a place and feel invisible, remember, invisibility is not your fate. It's a challenge to rise, to speak out, and to demand that you are seen. Because in a world that often forgets the human touch, Every act of genuine recognition becomes a beacon of hope. And I, Serena Davis, am committed to ensuring that hope never fades away. In the end, justice was not just served, it was redefined. And in that redefinition, a new chapter began for Starlight Hotels, for every employee who dared to care, and for every guest who deserved to be seen. It's a legacy that transcends a single night, a reminder that when we fight for what is right, the invisible can finally become visible. And together we can build a world where every story, no matter how small, matters. Every detail, every whispered complaint, every act of neglect that once threatened to break us has now become the foundation upon which we stand. And as long as there are voices left to be heard, I will continue to listen, to lead, and to ensure that our empire is not defined by its flaws, but by its unyielding commitment to excellence. For in the heart of every great establishment lies not just a brand or a product, but a promise that every person who walks through our doors will leave knowing they were truly seen. And that ultimately is the story of an empire reborn, a story of resilience, transformation, and the enduring power of a simple truth that every soul, every individual is worthy of recognition, respect, and a place in the light.